City Council into session. Dwayne, if you could please do the roll call, sir.
Yes, sir. Dingfelder. Gudis. Maniscalco.
Here.
Citro.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
And Vieira.
Here. And Councilman Dingfelder called to say he would be a little bit late, and he specifically requested that we begin without him, so we will proceed. Beforehand, some people were here tonight for a motion that I was going to be making at the end of Tampa City Council, and I wanted to have consent of this board to make a motion before, if I may. Any objections to that?
No problem.
I appreciate everybody. Everyone is, I'm sure, aware of the legislation. It's House Bill 1159, which is going to come to Governor DeSantis, which deals with local government's abilities to govern themselves yet again whenever it comes to trees. This proposed legislation allows the removal of trees for cause simply by hiring a professional arborist to determine if the tree stays or goes, which means the decision is solely in the hands of a contractor and essentially takes away the rights of cities to do just what we did and spent about 2 years on, of a lot of time and a lot of hard work. This is something that we continue to see from Tallahassee, where we are taking away powers from municipalities and local governments to govern ourselves. We've seen a lot of issues, and it actually goes further than that. We're actually taking away power from the people. We see recently what the legislature has done to Amendment 4 in order to draw that back, the clear intent of almost 2 out of 3 Floridians who came together to wipe out a 150-year-old voting restriction. What did the legislature do when they saw that? They scaled it back. And now we see the legislature talking even about scaling back the ability of the people to speak out on initiatives. So for me, this goes beyond trees, and this goes to the idea of not allowing the people through their local elected officials or through democratic voices to speak out on their behalf. So therefore, and any, by the way, comments from council members? Sure. Yes, sir.
Oh, just to echo some of what you said, it seems like Tallahassee knows best and knows better than you, the people who vote and decide, which is clearly untrue, especially on this, just call it the tree ordinance. Years have been invested, worth of time and hard work from citizens on our end, from the city staff, and, it's clearly offensive that legislatures or decision makers up at the state capitol think that they know better than we do when these are our backyards. And I totally agree with everything Chairman Vieira said. So, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, great. So therefore, I motion, and I'm handing the gavel to Vice Chairman Maniscalco. I motion for our council attorney to write a letter to Governor DeSantis asking him to please refrain from signing House Bill.
Second.
Oh, thank you. We have a second.
We have a motion from Councilman Chairman Vieira and a second from Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? No. Passes unanimously. There you go.
Thank you, and thank you for that rare indulgence. Okay, now we begin, and Dwayne, if you could swear in the witnesses. Sir, everyone who plans on speaking tonight in a quasi-judicial matter, please stand up and be ready to be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
And first, for some housekeeping, Mary, if we could go through the items that are going to be taken off the agenda.
Thank you, sir. Mary Samaniego from Development Coordination. Item number 1, which is Vacation 1910. Item number 3, which is REZ 1931. Item number 5, which is 1922. And item number 6, which is 1927. None of those 4 applications completed notice, and so they are going to be moved to another agenda.
Chairman, move to remove items 1, 3, 5, and 6.
We have a motion by Councilman Miranda, a second by Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, next we move onward to item number 2.
Mary Samaniego again for the record. Item number 2 is REZ 1929. It's a rezoning request for the property located at 214 South New Jersey Avenue from RM16 to RM18.
Good evening, council members. David Hayworth, your Planning Commission staff. I have been sworn. We start the evening off in the central Tampa Planning District. The subject site is located within proximity to transit. The closest transit stop is at South McDill Avenue and West Cleveland Street. The site is located within a Level D evacuation zone, and the closest public recreational facility is a quarter-mile northeast of the site, and it's West Pines Park. On to the aerial. This is the zoomed out one, more to show the rooftops. Here's the subject site. This is Platt. This is New Jersey. You see Azeel, Henderson, and Kennedy. This is Mitchell Elementary, one block to the east. On to the future land use category. The subject site, which is in the center, and all this brown color is the residential 20. The blue is the public, semi-public, that represents Mitchell Elementary. You've got some pink along McDill Avenue. That's the community mixed use 35. There's some light commercial, office uses. It becomes dense as you go further south. The darker brown is the residential 35. The blue here is Memorial Hospital. And then this kind of tan color of orange is residential 10. The Planning Commission staff has reviewed the petitioner's request and found no adverse impacts from the proposed project to the neighborhood. The request is consistent with several policies of the city's comprehensive plan as it relates to housing the city's population. In general, Tampa's comprehensive plan encourages the development and retention of a diversity of housing types to meet the needs of its present and future population. Based on those policies, Planning Commission staff finds the rezoning request consistent with the Tampa Comprehensive Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David. Mary Samaniego again for the record. Here is an aerial photograph of the surrounding property. As you can see, it's at the northeast corner of Platt and New Jersey Avenue. It is currently occupied by a single-family detached dwelling unit. This is the zoning map. The subject property is in green. The subject property and the surrounding area is currently in the RM16 land zoning district. That's a zoning district that allows for single-family houses, semi-detached dwelling units or duplexes, multifamily dwellings, and townhomes primarily. Over on McDill, you've got some commercial zoning and some planned development for commercial zoning, some residential office, and then again, residential development further to the east. Here's the subject property. I'll show you some photographs of the surrounding area so you can kind of see the development pattern. Here's the subject property. It's on a corner from one side. That's the side of the house. Here's the front of the house. As I go through these pictures, here is 2 dwelling units. Another structure with 2 dwelling units. This is a single-family house. Semi-detached dwelling units or duplex. Single-family house, multi-unit building, and that's a blank piece of paper. Okay. With the subject property, it's approximately 7,290 square feet. They're asking to be rezoned from RM16, which typically allows 16 dwelling units per acre, to RM18, which would allow 18 dwelling units per acre. Given the size of this property, if the rezoning were to be approved, they could theoretically develop 3 dwelling units on the site. There is no site plan to review with this rezoning application. They're just asking to go purely from one standard zoning district to the other, RM16 to RM18. As you can see from the photographs I've represented, this area is in transition. It was historically a single-family neighborhood, but with the R20 land use category that David indicated, this is an area that we're wanting to see increased intensity. So it has the multifamily zoning district on it already, and we're starting to see some of the single-family residential lots being redeveloped for townhomes or duplexes and very small apartment buildings. So this rezoning would allow for this rezoning application would allow for a development at the RM18 standards, which is the most intensive zoning district you can have in the R20 land use category. Saying that, the development compliance staff found this consistent with the City of Tampa Land Development Code.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Any questions? Okay, being none, we would ask the petitioner please come up.
Good evening, Council. Steve Michelini. I'm representing the petitioner, requesting that this property be rezoned from RM16 to RM18. As the staff has pointed out, the land use classification is residential 20, which would, in a planned category, would allow 20 units to the acre, We're requesting 18 units to the acre, which would allow us in this specific location to develop 3 townhouse units at approximately 2,400 square feet each. The staff has also indicated to you that they have no objections either from the city side or from the planning commission side. It is consistent with all of the goals and objectives of the city, and it's providing much needed housing in an area that's anticipated for increased growth and development. It is in between a number of commercial districts. It's close to a hospital and schools, and it's providing providing a residential component where there already is multifamily components immediately adjacent to it and throughout the area. It also is close to the transit corridors along Azeel and McDill and just south of Kennedy. So we're respectfully requesting your approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. This is a Euclidean zoning, so there aren't any waivers being requested through this rezoning request. If there are any subsequent waivers, they'll have to go through a different process that also will be noticed in a public hearing. Typically, if you have issues regarding the site, we'd be bringing this to you as a PD, and in this case, we don't need that those kind of waivers, so we're respectfully requesting your approval to go from RM16 to RM18.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the petitioner from council? Okay, being none, we move forward to public comment. Anyone here in the public would like to comment on item number 2, if please stand up at this time and come forward.
Move to close.
Okay. We have a motion to close by Councilman Miranda, a second by Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Councilman Goods, would you please, sir, take item number 2?
File number REZ 19-29, public hearing on application of Glenn McKay requesting to rezone property generally located at 214 South New Jersey Avenue from R16 and RM18.
Oh, and then you read ordinance and the following.
Ordinance being presented for first reading consideration, ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 214 South New Jersey Avenue in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classifications, RM-16 residential multifamily to RM-18 residential multifamily, providing an effective date.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Goods, a second by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Councilman.
Motion carried with Dingfelder being absent at vote. Second reading and adoption to be held on June 6th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m.
Thank you. And for new council members, if any of y'all have any questions on any of these procedures, just don't be afraid to ask. I'm just barely know these after 2 years, and it can be a big endeavor. Okay, next we go to item number 4.
Mary Samaniego, for the record, item number 4 is REZ 1933. It's a rezoning request at 2514 West Prospect Road from RS60 to RS75.
Good evening, council members. David Hay with your Planning Commission staff. I have been sworn. We moved down to the South Tampa Planning District for this next case. The subject site is located, transit is available approximately 0.4 miles to the east along South McDill Avenue. The subject site is located within a level C evacuation zone, and the closest public recreation facility is Burns Park, which is about a half a mile to the east of the subject site. On to the aerial, the subject site, of course, right in the center. This is Prospect Street, Neptune, and turns down Havana to the south. You could see the area is predominantly single-family detached. There is some multifamily, the Palmacia Apartments over on West Mississippi Avenue. You could see in the bottom right of the aerial. On to the future land use map. The subject site and all the properties on Prospect Street, Prospect Road, in the general neighborhood are all that residential 10. Immediately to the south, around the curve of Neptune and Havana, there's some residential 20. That's that brown color. Density increases as you move east down Mississippi. This darker brown is the Res 35. And then on Howard, there's some community mixed use 35 represented by the pink. There's commercial uses over, some commercial uses located over there. The subject site currently has a single-family home on site. The proposed zoning district of RS 75 will allow different setbacks and requirements that are allowed under the RS 60 zoning district. The request will not alter the character of the neighborhood. Development under the RS 75 zoning district will be comparable and compatible with the surrounding development pattern, and overall is consistent with the policies of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan. And based on that, the recommendation from the Planning Commission staff is to find this rezoning consistent with the Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you, sir.
Mary Samaniego. Again, here's an aerial of the subject property. It's on Prospect Road. It's currently a detached single-family house. The subject property on the zoning map is in green. It is north of Neptune is RS 60 zoning district. South of Neptune is primarily the RS 50 with some multifamily residential zoning districts in certain spots. Here is a photograph of the subject property. And then these are photographs of houses up and down this block, the 2500 block of Prospect Road. These are all taken from perspective from the public right-of-way. The applicant is requesting to rezone from RS 60 to RS 75. Typically, the RS 60 zoning district is a 6,000 square foot minimum lot size with at least 60 feet of road frontage. The RS 75, which is the requested zoning district, is 7,500 square feet in area, as well as a 75-foot minimum lot width. The subject property's lot width is 81 feet, and the overall square footage is over 11,000 square feet. So it meets the criteria for the RS 75 zoning district. Again, there's no site plan to review with this type of application, no waivers proposed. There are no comments from the Development Review Committee, so basically the Development Review Committee has found this consistent with the City of Tampa Land Development Code. Do you have any specific questions for me at this time?
Any questions from council members? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Petitioner, please.
Good afternoon, council members. Gina Grimes with the law firm of Hill Ward Henderson, and I'm here tonight representing Dave and Millie Redmond, who are the owners of the subject property. As you heard, the property is located on Prospect Road, and this is a photograph of the front of the property. As you also heard, we're requesting to rezone from RS 60 to RS 75, and that's somewhat unusual, and it's commonly referred to as a down zoning of the property. And by what that means is that the property is actually subject to more stringent regulations than it currently is subject to, for the most part. And under the RS 75, you are subject to different lot width requirements, greater lot width requirements, and greater area requirements. And you're probably wondering, why are we doing this? And I'm going to explain that to you in just a minute, but I'd like to first give you some background on the subject property. The Redmonds purchased this home in 1988, so they've lived there for 31 years. And this is a picture of the property. Recently, there was a piece of property in between this home and the Redmonds home that went up for sale. There was a home on that property. Both the Redmonds and their neighbors to the east, the Igleharts, purchased that property. They each purchased a portion of it. The Igleharts purchased 40 feet, the Redmonds purchased 20 feet of that property. And the Redmonds purchased the property on the east side. They had a porte-cochere there. You can see a portion of it in this next photograph. There was a porte-cochere on this part of their property, and this is the 20 feet that they added to their property, this area right in here. The reason that they purchased it is they wanted to add a driveway and a garage at the end of that 20 feet. The porte-cochere that they had a garage at the end of it, but the porte-cochere was so narrow they were never really able to maneuver in and out of that porte-cochere to get back to that garage. That original garage was eventually converted to a pool house. Now that they were able to purchase this additional 20 feet on the east side, what they're proposing to do is to use that 20 feet to make their driveway wider and to add an accessory structure in the rear. The reason for the rezoning request from RS 60 to 75 is because under the RS 75 standards, they would be able to construct a slightly larger garage. And I've included in your package of materials and let me go back. This is the area, this is the existing garage right here that has been converted to a pool house. On the street, there is a lot of on-street parking. In fact, sometimes, as you can see here, you only have a single lane of travel. You can see the cars parked up and down Prospect. So one of the benefits to this rezoning would be that it would take some of the cars that are currently parked on the street and take them off the street and allow them to park in this driveway. I've also included in your materials a copy of the proposed site plan, although this rezoning is not subject to a site plan, because I wanted you to see what's existing in the narrow porte-cochere, and then what's proposed with the wider driveway and the larger accessory structure at the end. And again, here is the calculation of the difference between the RS 60 and the RS 75 as far as the size of the accessory structures. The other thing I wanted to point out is this rezoning to RS 75 is consistent with the development pattern in the area. I've identified on this map the sizes of several of the adjacent lots, and just to give you a sense of why we think the 75, RS 75 is appropriate here, you have lots that are 120 feet wide, 120 feet wide, 90 feet wide, 88 feet wide. The Redmond's is 81. The house next door is 100. 90, 115, 105, 80, 150, 150. So as you can see, it's an area with very large lots, so the RS 75 would be appropriate in this location. Also on this map, every name marked in green has submitted a letter of support. So we have widespread support from the neighborhood. You also, as you heard, have support from both the city staff and the planning commission staff. It's consistent with the comp plan category of R10. And based on all these documents, based on the testimony, and based on the staff reports, all the evidence supports a finding of approval. And with that, we would request your approval of this rezoning from RS 60 to RS 75.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions from council for the applicant? Okay. Next, we move forward to public comment on item number 4. If anybody's here to publicly comment on item number 4, please stand up and come forward at this time so that we may hear you.
Move to close. Second.
We have a motion to close by Councilman Miranda, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilman Dingfelder, could you, sir, take item number 4?
In the VRB, you guys have some magical
Here you go.
language. Yeah.
Under ordinance.
All right, we'll just read the ordinance. Legal gives us magic words at the VRB, but I'll just move this. I'll move an ordinance being presented for first reading, an ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 2514 West Prospect Road in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in Section 1 from zoning district classification RS 60 residential single family to RS 75 residential single family. Provide an effective date, and I believe they've met all the standards, and there's no objection from the community, and it's consistent with the surrounding neighborhood.
We have a motion by Councilman Dingfelder, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion carried unanimously. Second reading and adoption to be held on June 6, 2019, and not earlier.
And Mr. Shelby, I just want to make sure, just for my own OCD lawyer hat here, additions of community, et cetera, at the end of a motion to move an ordinance that has no bearing whatsoever legally, I would assume.
Well,
I just want to make sure.
Well, at this time, there is no obligation to have to state the reasons why you support it. It would just be simply to be able to do it. There may come a time that we may have to do that down in the future based on what's happening up in Tallahassee, but at this point in time, it's been just a reading at first reading.
Great. Thank you, sir. Just making sure. Thank you. Moving onward to item number 7.
Mary Samaniego, item number 7 is REZ 1934. It's a rezoning request from commercial general to plan development for multifamily residential restaurant and retail strip shopping center with all CG uses with a bonus agreement pursuant to 27-140 of the Land Development Code for an increase of intensity from a 1 FAR to 2 FAR in the CMU 35 future land use category.
Good evening, council members. David Hay again with your planning commission staff. I have been sworn. We're in the central Tampa planning district for this next case. The subject site is also located in the West Tampa Urban Village. It is located in the North Hyde Park neighborhood. The closest public recreation facility is the new Julian B. Lane Riverfront Park, which is located approximately 2,100 feet to the northeast of the subject site. The closest transit stop is located approximately 1,500 feet to the east at the intersection of North Boulevard and West Cass. That is served by Hart's Route 7, which connects that site to downtown Tampa and Hillsborough Community College, the Dale Mabry campus. The subject site is also located within the Level C evacuation zone. Onto the aerial, this is zoomed out. You can see the subject site right here. This is Cass coming in from downtown. Downtown's off to the right or to the east. You can see that there's, to the south, predominantly there's a mixture of light industrial uses, commercial, there's some single-family detached, and we're all familiar with what's been happening on Rome. A lot of these industrial sites have been transitioning into multifamily development. Further south, you can see Kennedy Boulevard, the commercial located, this is the Walmart, about 4 blocks to the south of the subject site. And then you can see the beginning, a portion of the University of Tampa's campus, kind of to the southeast. Here we have the future land use map. It's kind of hard to see, but this parcel had a plan amendment to the Community Mixed Use 35, which is the same color as over out on Rome. The surrounding parcels in that light blue are all that general mixed use 24. That's one of the categories in the city that allows not only residential and commercial, but also light industrial uses surrounding the site. You could see as we move north of Cass Street, you get some of the darker brown, that's the residential 35, and then it transitions and the density starts decreasing as you go north into the residential 20, up to about 2 blocks to the north. Over to the west of Rome is where you get some residential 10, which is predominantly single-family detached. South of the site, there's a mixture of residential 20, which again is the brown. The general mixed use, again the light blue, which allows that light industrial consideration. And then down on Kennedy is that urban mixed use 60. Hard to tell with all these different colors, but that allows up to 60 dwelling units per acre. As you move down Kennedy, this kind of reddish color, that's the regional mixed use 100. That's the most intensive land use category outside of downtown. You see that over in the Channel District as well. And then the blue is the public, semi-public, dealing with the University of Tampa. The subject site is located within an area of the Central Tampa Planning District, which has been transitioning from a predominantly light industrial development pattern to a more mixed-use urban neighborhood. The subject site is also located within the West Tampa Urban Village, which encourages a mixed-use development pattern where appropriate. A number of similar type developments have been approved and developed to the west of the subject site, mostly centered along North Rome Avenue. The comprehensive plan supports infill development, such as this proposal, that brings additional density and intensity into areas currently served with transit and that are located within proximity to employment centers. The proposed development provides for a well-designed structure with entryways and a pedestrian lobby oriented to adjacent public rights-of-way. Overall, the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding development pattern while also promoting the redevelopment of the city's mixed-use corridors in a way that promotes pedestrian and transit usage. The The proposed development is also consistent with the development pattern envisioned under that Community Mixed Use 35 future land use category. Based on those considerations, the Planning Commission staff finds the rezoning request consistent with the provisions of the Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive.
Thank you, sir. Marty, is that on?
Mary Samaniego for the record. Here is an aerial photograph of the surrounding areas. David indicated this area has been transitioning for the last several decades away from the historic single-family residential and light industrial uses over to a mix of townhomes and multifamily residential structures with some small retail development. So the subject property is currently the Showman's, the Greater Tampa Showman's Association facility. All of that would be demolished with the proposed development. Here
Mr.
is
Chairman.
So just a point of
Councilman
order.
Dingfelder.
Just a point of order, and I apologize for my delay. You just triggered something in my mind in regard to a disclosure. With my real estate hat on, I'm representing a different Showman's organization. It's called Showman's Rest, Inc. I've done a little bit of research when I knew this project was coming along because it's currently owned by, what's the title you just said, Showman's?
the Greater Tampa Showman's Association.
Right, and I asked my client, Showman's Rest, Inc., if they were corporately related to the other Showmans, and they said they were not. They said they had some overlap in regard to membership, but I don't know any of the folks who own this particular property. So I just wanted to disclose that for the record. Ms. Shelby, if you have any questions for me in that regard, go ahead.
Are you aware that they have, the people who you have done real estate work with, or presently, I don't know whether it's presently or past, do they have any financial stake in this particular petition before you today?
I think they might be members of that organization.
But it's a separate corporate entity.
Separate corporate entity.
Okay, and that being said, can you be fair and impartial and make your determination based on the evidence of this hearing?
Yes, absolutely. I've had no relationship with this particular Showman's group. It has the same name and it has some overlap in membership, but I don't know these people at all.
Okay, well,
and I can be fair and impartial.
Well, then, based on the facts as you presented them, it's my opinion that you do not have a conflict of interest, and under Florida statutes, you are required to participate and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Better safe than sorry. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Mary Samaniego again. The subject property is currently in the commercial general zoning district as well as some of the surrounding area. Across the street is the commercial intensive zoning district on Willow Avenue. Kind of this is the beginning of the gateway into the West Tampa overlay area. This again is a planned development. They are asking for specific uses and approval of a specific site plan. I will briefly go through the site plan and the requirements. I know the applicant will go through the proposed project in more detail. They are requesting on this property, which is a total of 1.93 acres, 192 dwelling units in a multifamily context, with approximately 3,200 square feet of retail and a restaurant on the first floor along Willow, North Willow. This is Cass, this is Willow, this is Cartman. The entire building will be 5 stories with a maximum square footage of just under 165,000 square feet. The proposed setbacks as part of a planned development is north 5 feet, south 5 feet, east is going to be 0 feet, which is in conjunction with the West Tampa overlay standards, and to the west is 8 feet. The maximum building height will be 65 feet total. As far as the waivers outlined in your staff report on pages 1 and 2, the first waiver that they're requesting is to contribute to the tree trust fund for plants that cannot be planted on site. They are required, with all the trees that will be removed, they're required by code to replace those trees on site. And then there were also trees that they were required to plant on site as part of just the overall project development. So between the required trees to be planted on site for their project and the mitigation trees or replacement trees for the trees they're removing, they're asking a waiver because there simply is not enough green space left to plant all the combination of all the trees. The second waiver that they are requesting is to allow non-residential parking lots to access arterial or collector streets for Carmen Street. Cass Street is considered a collector, so they're allowed to have a driveway here, which they have a one-way in. However, they have a double one-way out on Carmen Street. The Carmen Street is considered a local street. The code says that you cannot have a commercial development accessing a local residential street. Because they have a commercial element to this project, that code requirement applies, and so they need a waiver for this driveway access onto Carmen. The third waiver they're requesting is to reduce the total number of parking spaces from 367 to 297, which is a 19% parking space reduction. Staff achieved the requirement for 367 based on the number of dwelling units, as well as the combination of retail uses and a possible restaurant on the site. Whenever we do require parking for a planned development, we calculate the requirement to the worst case scenario. If the entire 3,200 square feet of development or the portion that they've allotted for restaurant uses were to be developed for that use, and then the remaining would be retail, and all the units were occupied for the maximum amount of proposed bedrooms, that would be where we get the 367. But they're asking for a 19% parking reduction. Waiver number 4, the code requires 2 loading spaces based on the use and the square footage of the buildings. Typically, your first loading space is 12 by 60, instead of having one 12 by 60 loading space, and then the second one may be 12 by 30. They're asking for both of those loading spaces to be 12 by 30. The vertical clearance for a loading area is typically 16 feet from finished grade. They're asking to reduce that down to 10.5 feet. So that's the 5th waiver. The 6th waiver that they are requesting is to reduce the required green space for multifamily green space per unit from a total of 67,200 square feet of green space required to 9,367 square feet of green space, with that deficiency paid into the green space pay in lieu fund. The green space requirement for this type of development, given that it's 5 stories, requires 350 square feet of green space on site per dwelling unit. They have 192 dwelling units, so that's how staff arrived to the calculation of owing a little over 67,000 square feet of green space. They're asking for a waiver to reduce that amount. And then the final waiver they're requesting is to some of the signage as part of the site plan. Basically for the allowable sign area and the maximum height of the signage along the main corridor on Willow. For the allowable sign areas to be from 25 square feet to 37 square feet, and to increase the maximum allowed text height from 12 inches to 24 inches. And then also for sign number 5, to increase the maximum allowed square footage of sign area from 25 feet to 41 feet. And the applicant will show you in detail kind of the location and context of those signs. As I stated when I first read the agenda, the applicant is requesting a density bonus, and there's an associated development agreement that the legal department will introduce. By right, they get a Florida area ratio of 1.0. With the bonus provision and development agreement, they're asking for a bonus of 2.0 for a Florida area ratio. So they're almost doubling their allowable square footage. As part of that development agreement, the proposed payment through the development agreement for the density bonus would be about $850,000, with associated improvements built into that development agreement. within the surrounding area. If this PD is to be approved, land development has some changes between the first city council meeting, which is this meeting, and the next city council meeting for a revised site plan. There are just some clerical corrections to be made. Transportation did find this inconsistent based on the access to a local street, again, for Carmen, as well as the 19% parking reduction. Natural Resources found this plan development inconsistent with the amount of green space waived from, a little over 67,000 square feet required, waiving down to a little over 9,000 square feet. There are several other changes between first and second reading that Natural Resources would require, as well as the Natural Resources has also formally objected to the contribution into the tree trust fund for the mitigation trees. Urban Design did review this. They found it consistent with changes between first and second reading outlined in your staff report. Saying that, overall, the Development Review Compliance staff did find this inconsistent with the Land Development Code, again referencing in your report to transportation's concerns with parking reduction and the local street access, and Natural Resources referencing the green space provision as well as the mitigation fund. Should it be the pleasure of City Council to approve the plan development, please include in your motion the modifications between first and second reading. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Dingfelder.
Is transportation here to speak to their objections?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Jonathan Scott, Transportation Planning.
So, it says the code requires ingress and egress from non-residential parking lots to access arterial collector. Carmen is local. You're objecting on that basis. Can you describe what's happening on that section of Carmen and what your concerns are?
Sure. Yeah, Carmen Street's a local street, so the code prohibits any kind of non-residential access to it. So in this case, most of the use is residential, but they do have a commercial component, a small one. So therefore, they would be inconsistent with that code. That's the only reason we're objecting to that, since there's local street there and it has residentially zoned property on it. It's really just for the commercial aspect of the project.
And it's a little hard to figure out at this point in time, and I'm sure Mr. Mechanic will help us, but is all of the traffic that comes out of this project coming out of that spot at Carmen, or is it broken up, or do we know?
Let me look at it real quick.
It's like a one-way in and a two-way out. Remember that?
Yes, it comes out right here.
Yeah, double out, one-way in. That's it.
Yeah, so they have one way coming in on Cass, but they have on Carmen Street, they can come in and out. So you'd have some traffic coming in off of the Cass Street, but on the Carmen Street, you could have traffic coming in and out right there too.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other further questions from council? Okay, applicant, petitioner?
It looks like legal has.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Kristen Mora, Legal Department, I just want to address you briefly regarding the bonus provision agreement, the development agreement that Ms. Samaniego referenced. For our returning council member and for our new council members, the city does have a new bonus provision agreement section of our code. The previous version of 27-140 required a consideration by council of whether the amenities that were being provided were sufficient to offset the bonus that was being sought. The new bonus provision agreement, or the new bonus provisions under 27-140 does not require that consideration by City Council. It is a straight calculation based on the increase, and then that is directly related to the exact monetary value of the amenities that have to be provided. So City Council does not need to make an inquiry of whether or not there's sufficient amenities. That's already set out in our code of exactly how much they have to provide in exchange for the bonus that they would receive. In addition, all of our bonus provision agreements and the code contemplate a true-up at the time that they actually build this project. So they will have to do a new calculation that will be reviewed by the zoning administrator at the time of development to make sure that the amenities they're providing will offset the bonus that they are receiving. So I just wanted to give you that, that little explanation briefly.
Councilman Dingfelder.
So, yeah, this is an interesting new angle to this. Staff made reference earlier to a, quote, payment of $850,000.
That's correct.
So what you're saying, or perhaps what I'm interpreting in this document, is that it's not a payment per se, that it's that these amenities of new sidewalks, public parking, I assume off-site sidewalks, public parking, and some utilities on adjacent properties would add up to that $850,000? Is that how this is working?
Correct. They can provide certain amenities that are spelled out in that section of code, and then the amount of amenities they provide has to add up to that $850,000. If they have a shortfall, we do have a provision about contribution to transportation projects. So if there is a capital improvements project in the area, they'll have the ability to contribute to that if for some reason their other amenities fell short.
Okay. And it actually looks kind of neat, all the new sidewalks that are listed here. But where's the verification in terms of dollar amounts? Do they just provide the paid invoices as they accumulate them, and to try and match that to the $850?
So they actually do, whenever our building department is issuing a new building permit, they actually can do a cost analysis to try to look at the current cost of construction of that particular type of structure, and then the calculation is based off of that. So exactly how much of the structure, that additional density that they're going to yield based on property value and structure cost and all of those things, that will directly relate to the amenities that they provide.
But I mean, things like sidewalks are pretty straightforward. So they build the sidewalks and then provide that information?
Correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
Anything further from council? Okay. Petitioner, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, council members. My name is David Mechanic. My office is at 305 South Boulevard, Tampa, Florida. With me, and Mr. Dingfelder, I am going to answer your questions probably about midway through my presentation.
Thank you.
Here.
Go ahead.
With me this evening is Mr. Andrew Cohen, and as you know, he and his brother Gary have done numerous projects in the city of Tampa. I have referred to those in tab A in the notebooks that I distributed before this hearing. And I would like to say I'd like to enter those notebooks, or a copy of the notebook, into the record. It's entitled ABC Capital Corp., and it's referencing petition 19-34. So in tab A, as I mentioned, are several projects that Andrew and Gary have worked on, and I believe their reputation is well known with this council. One project on that list, the Grand Sheraton, was the recipient of award for excellence from the Urban Forestry Council for preservation of grand trees. The nomination for that project was made by Kathy Beck, the city's chief forester, I believe is her title. Also with me this evening is Randy Cohen of Cohen & Company and Mr. Matt Cormia of Scott & Cormia Architects. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Cormia to give you a little walkthrough of the project visually with the site plan and Just bear with me a moment. They've got to set up the easel. Is there a portable microphone?
I do not believe that there is. I am unaware of any.
Hi, sorry.
There we go. Thank you.
Oh.
Hello, can you hear me? All right. Good evening. My name is Matt Cormia. My office is in 429 South Keller Road in Orlando, Florida. I'm one of the principals at Scott and Cormia Architects. Thank you for having us. I appreciate it. Just so you know, we're coming from some other experiences in the city. We're in 1 week. We're going to enjoy a grand opening at Channel Club down in the Channelside District with the Publix that's opening up, and we're very excited about that. And we understand some of the Tampa communities. That's kind of why we're here. We're trying to have this project be kind of a game changer for the area. We hope it spawns a lot of potential for new development of existing warehouses into offices, restaurants, and other mixed-use developments for the future. What are the needs? We kind of discovered that most of those needs are something that's in line with the city. A welcoming place for home and patronage, pedestrian-friendly and bike-friendly environment and appropriate scale, and a place that is attractive to the demographics in both size and scale of the actual neighborhood that it's being put in. So what we did is we kind of looked at 4 main features and how we implemented this and how those needs are met. There's a heavy concentration on the retail on the northeast corner at Cass and Willow. That's shown right here. This is our retail design. This is actually on the Willow view. This is more kind of kitty corner as you're coming up to the property. And this area right here is across the street from Cass. We want to create a sense of place and a sense of welcoming that's not just for the residents, so people can come and have a beer or a coffee or have a local market there. One of the other features that creates a good sense of scale for this is the large canopy out in front. It's going to have a lot of outdoor seating, and it's very pedestrian friendly, and also right along the new bike path that's being built on Cass. So you can basically park your bike and grab a coffee and then get on or back to work. So one of the other things that's a really key part of this is because of the parking requirement, this had to have a structured parking. In all of these views, and actually any view from you've seen and the site plan, the parking is completely out of view. It's basically in the middle of the site, and we wrap the entire building around it. You don't see ramps, you don't see vents, you don't see anything that has anything to do with a parking garage, and that was intentional. One of the other things is, and this is something we've learned in other properties, is that the city of Tampa has a very active artistic role in this community, and we're hiring a local artist, I think, who is going to present. And in this elevation is best seen, there's a large palette, if you will, on the corner that shows what we're going to basically decorate it with. So right now, call it a call it a canvas, and we're going to have an artist, put something there that is either two-dimensional, three-dimensional. We have yet to see that. And then secondly, or lastly, the way we've treated this building is there's a lot of emphasis on kind of a modern brownstone. So on cast, we raised the finished floor up above the street, and that's shown right here. And what we're trying to do is create a porch where people can come out, they can be neighborly, they're not right on the roadway, and also gives the walker-bys a little less intimidating building facade to be walking up to. There's a little bit more of an approach. The other thing is we use a lot different materials. We have right here, we have like a metal panel material. We have brick. We have this really, in my opinion, a very cool steel structure over the retail area with a wood ceiling and nice lighting. We have, we'll call it wood siding, but it's siding nonetheless. And then there's some stucco in the high areas that would finish off the building. And we're trying to create an area that appeals to the demographics of this area, that's a little hip and fun, and also the right scale. One of the things that were mentioned was the clearances. Our entrance into the center of the building right here is kind of low. We didn't want to have this 18-foot opening as you come into the building and intimidate the people walking by. So I think that's pretty much what I have.
Thank you, David Mechanic, again for the record. I would just like to call your attention to tab C in the notebooks to show you the extraordinary level of community outreach which was conducted by my client. You'll see, I think, 3 pages of individual communications with residents and with organizations in the neighborhood. It was, in my experience, it was the most thorough and complete community outreach I've ever seen on a project. And to that end, and the answer to one of Mr. Dingfelder's questions is found in tab D, are the exhibits to the bonus agreement, which shows about 12,000 linear feet of sidewalk and 10 parking spaces on street that we intend to construct as part of the bonus agreement. And the answer to the question is that not just at the building permit stage, but at the CO stage, if the actual expenses do not add up to the $850,000 figure, then the property owner has to write a check to the city for the difference. But we did our best to try and match those improvements to the dollar amount so we could keep that investment in that neighborhood. And the locations of all those sidewalks were really a consensus of the neighborhood. My client did not really influence that decision. He relied on the consensus of the neighborhood for establishing where those sidewalks would be installed. I'd like to talk about the staff report a little bit. First of all, we agree we will make all the changes that Mary listed earlier. We have no problem making any of those changes. I would like to discuss, and Mary mentioned it several times, on page 1, she said the project is inconsistent with the Land Development Code. Well, the only reason that it's inconsistent is because we're asking for waivers. And it's part of the process, through the rezoning process, that the city council considers waivers and determines whether or not they should be granted. The waivers we are seeking are very commonly granted by city council. And I'd like to just go through, I did want to mention, on page 10 of the report, of the staff report, you will see a table, and it lists 10 departments or agencies of the city, and only 2 of them had inconsistencies. The other 8 found the project to be consistent with the Land Development Code. let me talk about the three that are listed as a basis for inconsistency. The commercial access to a local street. First of all, I don't believe there are any residences on Carmen. But aside from that, this is a provision of the code. I don't think you heard Mr. Scott tell you that there was some huge problem with it. He just told you this is a code section. And frankly, I think this code section is a little out of date because what it does is it penalizes mixed-use projects. If we had no retail at this project, we wouldn't need this particular waiver. And it is, that particular waiver is one that's very commonly granted by City Council. The green space waiver is really caused by a similar problem. As Mary said, the city code requires 350 square feet for every unit in your apartment, in your apartment complex, I'm sorry. 350 feet per unit is like something you would see at Tampa Palms. It's not what you would see in an urbanizing area, which the comprehensive plan, as Mr. Hay has just said, is encouraging density and urban mixed-use development. So again, the green space requirement is not really suited for an urban development area such as this particular neighborhood. Finally, the parking requirements of the city are also excessive in an urban environment. As you know, the downtown regulations are more lenient than the rest of the city. Likewise, in an urban area, perhaps the city should have more lenient parking regulations. However, we've compensated for that, and I want to ask Mr. Randy Cohen to come up and discuss the parking waiver in particular. Thank you.
Good evening, Randy Cohen, 4121 West Cypress Street, Tampa, Florida, and I have been sworn. Want to talk about parking. This is the 21st century. We're doing things a lot different parking-wise than we did in the past. We're finding that there are decreases in auto ownership, especially per person when we're dealing with the younger folks in the community. We have the effects of Uber and Lyft. We have numerous publications, of which just a few, on reductions in parking throughout the country as it relates to multifamily because of decreasing ownership, Uber, Lyft, the various things that are going on in the area. In this particular neighborhood, we have a number of parking waivers that have been granted in the past, which range from 15 to 30%. Our waiver is 19%. We also have a number of things going on in the neighborhood because not only is parking changing, but in fact, roadways are changing. This is Willow. Pedestrian and bicycle facilities, spent $500,000 on improvements in this area. Our project is located right there. When you look at...
I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap it up.
The Green Street, Green Spine, major pedestrian and bicycle environment, we're located right there. If we were in the city code, we'd get credit for the 70 bicycle spaces we're providing on the site, 35 spaces. Our 12 motorcycle spaces would also be creditable against parking. Our waiver would magically go from 19% to 6%. We also have, in fact, a lease across the street of a parking lot directly across the street with 45 spaces available to the project both evening and weekends.
Time is
and we'd be open.
unfortunately up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Mr. Dingfelder.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes, sir.
Could you put that aerial shot back up?
Sure.
Not related to the parking waivers, but related to something that Mr. Mechanic said a minute ago, as related to the local access street on Carmen. I think Mr. Mechanic said it, but we don't like attorneys to testify, but you can testify.
Yes, sir.
And you're under oath, correct?
Yes.
So looking at this map and your experience with the area, it doesn't appear to me that you have any single-family use, or frankly, any use across this small little local street.
No,
Is
that's
that? Can you point along that line and confirm that?
That's Carmen Street right here, and basically you have office uses, the parking lot we'd be leasing, industrial uses.
And
And I'd li-
how about under those trees? I think, is that all vacant?
Basically, it's vacant and it's a hodgepodge of things. I've driven down it, but it's been a while. I do not believe there are any residences there, but it is in fact a local street, so under code, it requires a waiver. And I would like to add, because you had that question before, what's commercial traffic that would be on this street? In the morning, it would be 6 vehicles. In the afternoon, it would be 12 vehicles. The predominance of this project is residential. The non-residential component is very small from a trip generation standpoint. So we have literally adding simply 6 trips in the morning, 12 trips in the afternoon on Carmen. So very minor impact.
I mean, I'd be very concerned if there was 5 single-family homes
Right.
across the street there under those trees, but it appears to me there's no homes at all.
I believe that's absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further questions from council?
Mr. Chairman, could council possibly indulge me for another 2 minutes to finish my presentation?
Any objection from council?
I'll move to give, grant 2 more minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilman Citro, a second by Councilman Dingfelder. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Dwayne.
Thank you very much. David Mechanic again for the record. I'd like to just show you aerial map of the neighborhood. And what you can see here, and if you read the fine print, these are 4 projects. The subject property is in the upper right-hand corner. The other projects in purple, green, dark purple, and blue are all projects with the same waivers that we are asking for council to grant this evening. These are 4 projects that were approved within the last 3 years, one of which, NoHo Square, was approved this past January by City Council. So we are not asking for anything extraordinary or untoward or unusual. These are variances or waivers that are typically granted by council. And with that, I would just urge council to consider the recommendations of the Planning Commission. This is the West Tampa Urban Village, and it is slated and proposed for additional dense mixed-use development, and that is exactly what we're proposing this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now we move forward to public comment. Is anyone here to speak on item number 7? If so, please stand up and come forward. And I would ask that if you're able to stand, that everyone who's going to be planning on speaking on item number 7, please line up against the wall to your right so that we can have a good idea.
Mr. Mechanic, may I ask that you take the easels down to allow the public to have access easily?
And I assume that everyone who is standing has been sworn in. I'll take that as a yes. And the first one may proceed.
I'd like to say hi and to everybody and the new council members. Welcome to our city. I'm Ruth McNair, and I have lived in the house that I live in 60 years. And I live the second house off of Willow and Nassau. So I'm about a 1.5 block from this project. And when I think about all the traffic we already have, I don't know how we're gonna be able to have any more. And then the waivers that they're asking for, I cannot accept that. So I just don't think this project is the right thing, the way it's going to end for us. Transportation, they haven't even done a study on the traffic problem. And we have a problem with traffic out there. And then on Kennedy, coming down from Willow, they have a no truck through, no truck not supposed to even go through. The sign is up there, so no through trucks. But they do that. We see that all the time. So we asking you all to please help the neighbors, because we just don't think this is the right project to come in right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next, please.
Good evening, council members, and congratulations on your receipt. I am Whit Raymer, president of Walk Bike Tampa, a local nonprofit organization focused on pedestrian and bike safety, promoting active transportation options, and quite simply, building a better street level experience for all users to enjoy. Walk Bike Tampa has been supportive of the City of Tampa's Green Spine Plan for several years. The Green Spine Plan, as the applicant partially explained, is an east-west, three-phase, semi-protected bike lane stretching from Howard in the west to 15th Street in the east in Ybor City. Phase 3 of the Green Spine Plan runs through North Hyde Park, an area of town experiencing a lot of growth and where the applicant's property is located. I recognize that the neighbors in this area objected to the applicant's first proposal and that the council denied that original application. But as we understand it, over the last year, the applicant has spent considerable time working with the community to build consensus on the project. Perhaps they need to spend a little more. The project provides amenities to this neighborhood that I think grows in a manner consistent with the community's values. I'd like to make several observations. Thanks to the neighbors and the council for nudging the applicant to take a hard look at the design features in the original application. That's important that you guys push back sometimes. To the applicant, working in the community can provide valuable insight and help find common ground early on in the process. Another note to applicants before council. As Walk Bike Tampa continues to promote and advocate for streets and developments that provide sidewalks, bike infrastructure, density, and mixed uses, we think this process worked. As we understand it, the applicant will be building out several blocks of new sidewalk in the area, and we hope those connections prioritize routes to school and other mixed-use dense areas. We've requested and received confirmation from the development team that these sidewalks will be built using best use practices such as proper tree shading and protection of root systems, and we hope the developer will maintain a close supervision on the subcontractors tasked with those efforts. To your point, Councilman Dingfelder. Finally, we suggested that the developer install electric vehicle charging stations, specialized bike racks, and other best use practices for growing denser areas, and those recommendations were well received. I don't intend on coming to comment before every development before council, but I think this case provides a good lesson to all those applicants that are creating very real changes to the building stock of our community. We need to recognize how these changes impact a neighbor who enjoys coffee on the porch in the morning or walks their dog. Tampa is a wonderful place to work, live, and play. Each of these individual development decisions collectively make a big difference in the fabric of our neighborhoods. We appreciate the attention and direction this applicant has given since the original application. Let's get the sidewalks right. Let's get the street rights. Let's encourage more walking and biking. Let's grow together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, please.
Good evening, council. Welcome to the new councilman. Good to see some new faces. My name is Brant Peterson. I own a business in the area at 1727 West Cypress Street. I'm also on the board of the North Hyde Park Alliance. I'm speaking this evening in favor of this project. I think the developer has done an excellent job of reaching out to the community and hearing their needs. They have performed a few noteworthy improvements to the project as a direct result of comments from the neighborhood. One being the walk-up units on Cass Street. I think that's a good addition, especially given the green spine planned along that area of Cass. Significant increase to the retail, which is very important, something we've been asking for quite a long time in the neighborhood here. And then the third, and I think this cannot be overstated really, I don't know if this picture has been shown yet, if I can use the projector, is the amount of sidewalks in the area is significant. We've been asking for 4 or 5, longer than I've been involved in this neighborhood, for sidewalk improvements in the area. So to get 12,000 feet, which I understand is the blue lines here representing the map, is extremely significant. I'd say a game changer for the area. So the project's done, I think, a phenomenal job of improving, as was so eloquently stated before. Some of the waivers are just surprising to me. The requirements for the waivers, excuse me. I think I heard 67,000 square feet of green space. That's over 1.5 acres of green space. I love green space as much as the next guy, but that seems a bit extreme for a project of this nature. I agree with the parking waivers as well. I think that's a little extreme. So I'm for this project. I encourage you to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Good afternoon, Councilman, and welcome to all our new members. I'm Lou Sheard, and I'm from the West Riverfront. I'm here to say that our community feel that this particular structure is not for our community at this time. It's been the last 7 to 8 years we've been dealing with condos, townhouses in our area. On State Street, I live at 1315 West State Street. I was blocked in when they built the first development about 70 years ago, and we was using Oregon to go across Cass to get to Walmart. But since they put all the condos from Cypress almost down across the Lemon, our community was using Willow and Cass, where this new facilities are supposed to be coming. So we are using that light to get across to South Tampa, going up to Kennedy. We could hardly get across in our community. I know everybody's saying it's nice, the green space and this and that, but do they live 2 blocks and 1 block from this construction that's being built? And also we have to consider UT. I passed through that today. That was blocked all the way down from Kennedy across from North Boulevard. They was running the light coming through there, and where are they headed? They're headed to Cass and Willow, which is going to bring more traffic to our community. And also Blake, if you all don't know, there a lot of cars are also headed to the Crosstown and to Kennedy. And also at 405 North Oregon, which is only about a block from this new structure. That was my former church that burnt down. They're building a new whole townhouse community. So have they considered that particular park and how many units and people that's going to bring to our little area? Yes, it's all good to come and bicycle and whatever, but do you have to live there? Do you have to try to get across to shop? This is just, to us, it's just not the time and it's just not the place. We have been inundated with this for the last 7 to 8 years, and we are against it. Not against anyone, but it's just no other place, hardly in our community, for us to drive. I heard the man say something about Uber and Lyft. Yes, Uber and Lyft, because people don't want to drive anymore. I have senior citizen neighborhood that's taking the cab and Uber and Lyft because they're afraid to drive across Kennedy on Cypress. So I'm just here to say I'm just totally against this right now. It's a beautiful facility, the way they present it, but I don't think it's for our neighborhood at this time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Dingfelder.
Ma'am?
Ma'am?
Could I ask you a quick question? Yes. And I appreciate your objections. I appreciate you coming down here tonight. Is there any, you've probably looked at the plans that they have presented over time. Is there any particular improvements or changes specifically that you and or your neighbors or community would suggest that you could at that point be more in favor, or are you basically saying this is just too much?
Yeah, we're basically saying, Councilman, that this is too much. We've been to some of the developers' meeting, and right there on that corner, it floods down Willow. I'm telling you, if you don't live there, you don't know the ramification of having to go through that. So it really is the parking, the traffic, that's going to be coming with other condos. These are $400,000 units that's going to be built right there in our community. We got some all the way down on Rome, all around the Walmart. Sometimes you just can't hardly get out unless you go to a light. And Willow and Cass is our go-to light. And now we're going to be jammed up with more traffic, more pedestrian, more vehicles. It's more vehicles than they want to say. It's a lot of vehicles out there.
Is Rome an option? Is Rome Avenue an option for the neighborhood? Because sometimes I go cutting through your neighborhood too. I apologize, but is but is Rome? Sometimes I'll go down to Rome because I don't want to mess with North Boulevard or even Willow. but I go down to Rome and then cut across to Kennedy.
Yeah, see, we used to be able to go to Rome, but they blocked us in on State. Of course, we have to go to Cypress, and we do sometimes go to Rome, and we go the back way to Walmart.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next, please.
Rafael Hernandez, 1917 West Fifth Street. I'm excited for this project. I've been waiting 7 years for mixed use in North Hyde Park. The last developer, which I think Mr. McKenna represented, told us that if we wanted retail, we could take an Uber, or if we could order Uber Eats if we wanted food. Basically, told us no, we wouldn't put that much retail. This project is actually different. It's truly mixed use. It should be the standard for projects in West Tampa moving forward. We want to be serious about walkability and transit. This project brings density of residential and retail, which we know makes for a thriving urban neighborhood. If we had more projects like this, senior citizens wouldn't need to get in a car or get an Uber. They could just walk to the doctor's office, they could walk to the coffee shop, they could walk to a restaurant, instead of forcing them to get into vehicles. As far as parking, we have projects like this that have empty parking decks. I've seen them. There's like 2 parking decks in NoHo Flats that are empty. No cars are parked there. Not everybody owns a car. Not everybody needs a car. But we keep demanding these projects to create more parking spaces, which end up costing more to people that rent the places or buy units, because the developer has to pay for those parking spaces somehow, so they raise the rents on it. The most important takeaway from this project is that this project was rejected by City Council originally. What happened? Did the developer say, I gave up? No, they came back with a stronger proposal, a proposal that benefits most of the neighborhood. So don't hesitate to turn down projects, because otherwise when you hesitate and you just rubber stamp projects, we get a project like the one behind here. We have a building on a whole city block with, I think has a coffee shop in the middle of downtown, which is insane. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next person, please.
Good evening, and welcome to all the new council members. My name is Brenda Lindsay, and I live 1916 West Lemon Street. I'm a member of the North Hyde Park Civic Association. I'm here to speak on my behalf as a community member. When this project was first proposed to us, it was proposed to us as a UT project. I appreciate the developers coming back and changing their whole concept. It's now a community project, and I appreciate that. I had a lot of problems with what they were saying and how they were going to develop the neighborhood. But since they're going to put in the sidewalks, I commend them for that, because I have been screaming for sidewalks since they moved the project, before they moved the project from Main Street to Kennedy, for people walking and biking to Walmart. So I approve of that. I don't like the project because it's going to bring a lot of traffic to the area. They're talking about putting up a development on Oregon, and then these guys are talking about adding 35 street parking. Where? Where are they going to put the street parking? On what street? All on Carmen? It won't hold 35. So they're going to have to go down Oregon somewhere to put the street parking. They're talking about putting 35 bike and motorcycle parking. Where? Where are they going to put that around that building? The green spine is coming. I see a lot of congestion in that area. So for me, it's a good project, but it's not going to work for our neighborhood. The traffic will be too horrendous. I commend them for working with us. They did change a lot of things to what we would like to see in the project. And so I thank them for that. But I don't think it's going to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next, please.
Casey Ellison, 3016 West Villa Rosa Park. Good evening, council. I think this is a fine example of both great urban design and also a developer that cared about the neighborhood enough to take the rejection and come back and do it over again and listen to the folks in the neighborhood, the stakeholders. This is an improving neighborhood that wants to be live work, wants to be truly mixed use. It'll feed Julian B. Lane Park and all the amenities the city has done. I think Mr. Cormia and ABC Capital are both very experienced and fine examples of people in their professions, both architecture and development. And I would encourage you not to let outdated zoning codes affect your decision here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me, good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Ellison. I live at 101 South 12th Street in the Channelside area. And, you know, change is inevitable, and I think this project will bring a very positive change to this neighborhood, and it will be really, you know, just a big improvement to the neighborhood. I think it'll bring more life to the neighborhood, and I think that the residents that live there now, once they see the finished product, will be proud that it's in their neighborhood. So I strongly encourage you to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Juan Santayana, businessman. Also, I'm a board member to the West Tampa Chamber of Commerce. I've heard a lot about this project. I live in West Tampa, so I'm very much aware. When I hear sidewalks, my eyes light up. So I'm all for the project. I think progress is important. I think that what the developers brought in the new proposals are going to really make a change. Also, you're going to create jobs just as well. We're not just going to talk about the negative, let's talk about the positive. There's going to be residents, there's going to be restaurants, there might be coffee shops, there might be all kinds of shops. People around there can work. So to me, it's no-brainer. I asked the council to vote yes, and I hope it really goes through. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, please.
Good evening, Council. Congratulations. Excuse my voice. I woke up with a bit of a frog in my mouth, or throat, sorry. My name is Carlos Ramirez, 2103 West Carmen Street. I'm on the board for the North Hyde Park Civic Association and Neighborhood Watch. I'm also on the board for the Alliance, which allows me a seat on the West Tampa CRA CAC, where I'm currently heading the infrastructure subcommittee. The reason I say all this is because I want you all to know how involved I am with West Tampa and my community. And everyone is correct. The first time the developer came and presented this to us, we were all here, T-shirts and all, saying, no, we don't like this. And the reason is we don't want more apartments in North Hyde Park. However, the developer came and he's done a lot of changes. He has listened to the community and the issues that we had with the other development, and he's made the changes to improve them. He's met with us several times. The infrastructure subcommittee for the West Tampa CRA CAC facilitated a meeting with 3 of the communities, West River, North Hyde Park Alliance, and Hyde Park Civic, to discuss the sidewalks. We had a meeting, we had follow-up communication. We all got together, North Hyde Park Alliance, the Civic Association, we got together as to where we think the sidewalks should be. We reached out to West River and we heard back on a couple of streets that they wanted to add sidewalks. Big concern for us was walkability. We can live in our community, we can work in our community, but we can't play in our community. And for the longest time, we've been asking for mixed use to come in and help us grow. And nobody has listened, nobody believed in the vision. And then now we have, this big development who has a lot of retail space coming in. Rome is a big issue for us because there's a lot of people walking from the north to the south. It's a patchwork of sidewalks, not really continuous on one side or the other. So that was our main point, is to provide sidewalks, continuous sidewalks on both sides of Rome, from the interstate all the way to Kennedy. Oregon, same thing, all the way up and down on one side, so it could be continuous. And the rest of the sidewalks were were presented so we can connect to Cass, Rome, and Willow. So I'm speaking in favor of the development. I hope you look at these type of projects, and if the community is against it, of course, please listen, such like the developer has, where they've raised kind of the bar of how to make changes and how to interact with the community. This, all in all, for us is a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Goods.
Sir,
sir,
step back to the podium for me, please. I heard you state you were on the CAC of the West Tampa CRA?
That's right.
And you talked about the sidewalks.
Yes.
Did your group talk about the transportation? Because I hear a lot of the other people in that community are mentioning transportation. So what was the outcome or discussion on transportation?
Well,
Traffic.
the West Tampa CAC can't go for or against this development. We can only facilitate certain meetings. But as far as the neighborhood is concerned, we did come up and we did ask for the study to see if it had correct data. We had another previous developer who came in who had old data. Just the vehicles that were collected were at non-peak times that were done when UT was out of session. So we asked this developer if they had gotten current data, and they said they did.
Well, if you had a CAC partnership meeting with all the communities, what was their main concern about the transportation, and what was their voice to the CAC?
The voice of the community, there were concerns of traffic of cars, but there were also a lot of positives of people happy that there's going to be some kind of retail, some kind of restaurant, some kind of place for people to gather and come, and also the sidewalks were a plus as well.
One last question. How many people are generally at your partnership CAC meeting? Not your board meeting,
At
but
the
your
West
CAC.
Tampa CAC meeting, it's usually about 30 people.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sherry Denham, 1713 West Cass Street. I'm here representing myself as a North Hyde Park native, as a North Hyde Park resident, rather. It's hard to go anywhere in Florida. Drive 15 miles and you're going to see dump trucks, bulldozers, and cranes. We are growing, we are developing. It's just who we are as a state. It's up to the communities to engage or complain about it for the next 20 years. North Hyde Park has chosen to engage. Do we want more apartments? Maybe not necessarily so. If we turn down this, we turn down the sidewalks that we wanted, we turn down the retail that we wanted, then 6 months later, another developer can come in and maybe he's not so willing to work with us. Maybe he won't give us public art. Maybe he won't, give us the retail that we're actually requesting. We've requested specific retail establishments, and he's actually working with us, trying to bring that into our neighborhood. So that's a very positive thing. Very concerned about traffic, concerned about more roads, more cars on Cass Street. Cass is a main vein in and out of downtown. I hear the traffic every morning and every evening right outside my house. So that is a concern. However, this developer has been very willing to work with us. He has been very attentive to the needs and the concerns of the neighborhood. So I've been very impressed with that. We feel like we've definitely reached our saturation point. Please, no more new apartment complexes after this one. Personally, that's my feeling. This is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next, sir.
Good evening. My name is Josh Pearson. I'm 1705 West State Street. I'm here representing Pep Rally Inc., which is my artist collective that is in North Hyde Park. I just wanted to confirm that we have been approached by the developer to do the public art component for this piece. And there was no art direction or anything towards that, so it's like we are most notably known for some of the artwork we've done for Julian B. Lane. We recently finished the Sparkman Wharf project. So they had encouraged us to create something that would be embraced and cherished and some timeless for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Good evening. Welcome to New City Council. My name is Harriet McCray. I'm working with the West Riverfront Neighborhood Association. One of the things I want to emphasize about the development of the West Tampa area, and particularly the West Riverfront and the Old West Tampa communities, is that the communities, associations that are present now are the ones who in the past helped to get the area as it is now. They're the ones who went out and did the overlay. I was one of the members of the overlay who helped write it, as well as Ms. McNair, and the North Hyde Park Association also was part of that. So the segue into one of the things that was brought by the city departments was about the waivers, in particular for Chapter 27 zoning, which is where the overlay is also part of. I wanted to know whether or not the waivers that were asked conflict with the overlay itself. Because one of the things we don't want to do when we were developed the overlay was to set the standards, but we also did not want to set a precedence where if we say an overlay design is 35 feet long, it's supposed to be 35 feet. We didn't want to have something with petition where the next thing is 40 feet, 50 feet and all. So that's one of the questions that I do have in that we're concerned about. One of the things also, I know that there was some sort of traffic study that was done, I believe, if I'm correct, if anyone could tell me. I don't know how long ago that traffic study was done, but one of the things that has to be consideration, if that traffic study was not done when North Boulevard Homes was unoccupied, it needs to be redone because that will come online next. That's the next biggest project that's coming on next. We have to include that traffic in that area. That's the area that's off of Willow and North Boulevard. That has to be considered. Two, also, the neighborhood, if the development goes through or doesn't, the neighborhood has to be very considered because, as they say, they do have to live with it. And if you have to live with something, you want to make sure that you're able to have a sustainable life in your neighborhood, and that that you'll be able to have something that's livable for not only yourself but also for the generations that'll come afterwards. So also be very considerate of that, if you will be. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And a question, Councilman
Thank you,
Citron.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Cray, are you for or opposed?
I'm what the neighborhood wants, whatever best for the community. So I can't really, because right now, I've worked with a lot of projects that have come in, and we try to do what's best for the community. If the community doesn't want it and they feel as though that's what's the best thing for it, then it shouldn't be. If it's something that's going to be negotiable, it should be something that both sides be able to negotiate so it would be fair to all.
Thank you.
And Councilman Dingfelder, then Dukes. Oh, ma'am. Oh, ma'am? Ma'am?
Well, it wasn't a question for her. It was actually in response to her to ask staff a question that she posed, which I think is a good question, but I can do it in any order you wish, Mr. Chairman.
I'll tell you what, Councilman Goods, did you have a comment to make? For staff? Okay, so let's first have Councilman Dingfelder's inquiry, then Councilman
Mary.
And ma'am, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. The young lady poses a good question in regard to the relationship between the waivers and the overlay district. Do you have any comment or opinion on that?
Yes, Mary Samaniego, for the record. The proposed application is in compliance with all of the overlay standards, except for they're asking for an increase in some of the signage square footage.
Square footage?
Yes, but all of the other 27241 standards are in compliance.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Councilman Goods, did you have a question, sir?
And that's consistent with the strategic plan for that CRA?
The CRA strategic plan is not a consideration for the land development review.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, thank you, ma'am, and thank you.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Taylor Ralph, 3703 West San Juan Street. Did not come here to talk about this project, but I'm going to. I'm aware of it. It's apparent that the developer reached out to the community and got input and feedback from them and is trying to do the right thing by investing in infrastructure. And that's something that the city did not do in this part of the city. North Hyde Park from 2009 to today has grown exponentially. There has been a ton of apartment units added, and there really hasn't been a lot of thought in terms of where we're going to put the apartments and where single family is going to go and where townhouses can go. And it's a piecemeal patchwork, and the neighborhood is a very historic neighborhood, actually. There's a lot of families that have lived there for many, many years. And I think it's important that when the city invests in big infrastructure like Julian B. Lane Park and other things like West River, that they plan for the communities nearby to have similar growth and include the neighbors and the community that already live there by finding ways to create affordable housing units and including infrastructure investment in sidewalks and bikes and all of those kinds of things. I really came here today to thank you all for this morning's vote to sign the Urban Land Institute's Building Healthy Places grant application support. And that grant would do exactly what is needed in this neighborhood, which is look at land use, look at zoning, look at infrastructure, and figure out how the city can plan in advance of these things so that the neighbors understand and are a part of the planning and the right projects come forward in the right places, as opposed to requiring a developer to do a PD and ask for all of these waivers and do all of these customizations. Let's get the zoning right and allow them to use the zoning to their advantage and develop great projects. Luckily, this project is a great project. It has retail that's actually authentic. It is creates an outdoor environment for the residents and for the retail and commercial areas, and it is including art and hiding parking garages. There's been a lot of terrible projects approved in North Hyde Park, surface parking lots and others. This is not one of them, and I think you all should support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here further from the public to comment on item number 7? Okay, being none, we move to rebuttal from Mr. Mechanic.
For the record again, David Mechanic. I'd like to ask Mr. Cohen to address, he did the traffic study, and he will address those comments. Thank you.
Good evening, Randy Cohen again. Traffic study, yes. A new traffic study was prepared January of this year. It included all development to date and proposed development that had not been built per City of Tampa requirements. We actually did a fairly large study for this sort of a project. We looked at a number of intersections: Cass at Rome, Cass at Willow, Cass at North Boulevard, Rome and Cypress, Kennedy and Willow. We found that all the intersections, with the exception of Willow and Kennedy, worked at acceptable levels of service without the project and with the project. Now, they are going to C from A and B, so they're getting a little worse, but they're still within the acceptable margin and operate well. At Kennedy and Willow, this particular application has to provide a transportation mitigation fee to pay for its share of an impact to that intersection. The city has improvements going on at the Kennedy and Willow right now in their CIP, so this project would be providing mitigation dollars towards that improvement, and with that improvement, it returns that intersection back to a level of Service C operation.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Specifically, a young lady asked if, you mentioned future projects, if the, whatever replacement is going to be proposed or is already proposed in the North Boulevard Homes project area was included in your traffic studies.
I believe they were included in the traffic study. We have a madrid of projects that were included in the traffic study. With our traffic counts, we're talking about only projects that are fairly new that aren't completed at this point in time. Remember, our study was just done 5 months ago.
Right, but I mean, if you look out across North Boulevard, you see a lot of dirt. So that's why I think the question is relevant.
The city required us to include all approved projects that had not been constructed in that area.
I don't know if that project's been approved.
And if it hasn't been approved, there's no way we would include it in the study, nor would it be required to be included in the study. In fact, that particular project would have to include this project and the others that have not been built in their traffic study.
I'm not looking for the logic of why or why not. I'm just trying to figure out if or if not. So
if it has not been approved, it was not included in this study, no, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Could just wrap up with a couple
Yes,
of
sir.
comments. David Mechanic, for the record again. First and foremost, I need to say that when Mr. Cohen did the study, they have a meeting at the city, and the city staff directs us to do a study in a certain way. That study was accepted by the staff, and we did it in accordance with their instructions. Just as a concluding remark, I would just like to reiterate the fact that the comprehensive plan refers to this area, this property, as being in the West Tampa urban village, and it is slated for increased density mixed-use development. We are proposing exactly the type of development that the comprehensive plan contemplates for this area. And my client, I believe, has gone to extraordinary lengths to meet all the city requirements except for the waivers, which I think we've indicated are really a product of antiquated codes that don't match up with the comprehensive plan in terms of dense urban development. And with that, we respectfully request the City Council's approval this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions from council members for the applicant? Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion? I guess we'll do that after motion to close. Any motion to close by Councilman Maniscalco? We have a second. We have a second by Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Oh, yes, sir. Councilman Goods.
Let me ask the city attorney. I'm a member of the West River Association, so I think I may need to recuse myself from this vote, sir.
You're a member of the West
River
River Association. Have you participated in this project?
No, sir.
In any way?
No, sir.
Did you attend any meetings regarding this project?
No, sir.
Are you in any executive capacity? Are you a member of the board?
No, sir.
Have you ever been a member of the board?
No, sir.
So your relationship with this board is solely being a member?
That's it, sir.
No leadership position?
No, sir.
And unrelated to this project in its entirety?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And with your membership, does that give you any cause to be anything but fair and impartial? Can you be fair and impartial and decide this solely on the evidence and testimony contained within the record?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And can you be free from bias?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That being the case, unless the attorneys have any other opinion, it would be my position that there is no basis for you to abstain from this. You have no financial stake in the outcome of the subject of this matter, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, then it's my opinion then that it would be your obligation to vote under Florida statutes, being that I do not perceive any conflict of interest.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Maniscalco to close, a second by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's go to discussion. Any thoughts from before we entertain any motions from council members on this item? Just for whatever it counts for me, I think that this is interesting project. One of the things that I always look at in projects as a side note is outreach by developers. When you're dealing with a large step forward for developing communities and for any community at all, and I think with this, we see some really good thoughtful outreach, and I appreciate that. I think it's an outreach that takes into consideration that this is a community that continues to change and move forward, and this developer wants to be part of that change, wants to be part of that moving forward, and so that's certainly something that I appreciate. Councilman Maniscalco, do you wish to take item number 7, sir?
Yes, sir. I have an ordinance and then I have the resolution. So I'll start with the ordinance being presented for first reading consideration. An ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 608 North Willow Avenue and 1332 West Cass Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classification CG Commercial General to PD Planned Development Residential Multifamily Restaurant and Strip Shopping Center with all CG uses, providing an effective date.
And we would also ask, or Councilman Maniscalco, the revisions, I think, weren't there some?
Including the revision sheet.
Including the revision sheet.
As outlined by staff.
As outlined by staff, so between now and second reading.
Thank you. And also, Mr. Chairman and Council, if you notice on the agenda, the resolution will not be adopted tonight. It will be taken up when Council reviews this at second reading and the adoption public hearing.
Okay, so we
there's
do
no
not-
action. There's no action to be taken on the resolution.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion by Councilman Maniscalco. Councilman Dingfelder, did you have something to say, sir?
In response to the motion.
Oh.
If you wanted to finish
Do
describing it.
you?
No, it's already done, providing an effective date.
Okay.
Do you have any comments on it, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm going to support the motion. I don't want the folks who have come down here to think that it was a waste of time. I think that the last time you came down here, I was not a member, but obviously you had a major impact on the project in regard to the fact that council turned it down. Obviously, they've made improvements. Working with you, they're going to improve the sidewalks and add some additional parking, et cetera, in the community, which is over and above what a typical developer has to do. So I think those are positive things. These things are always sort of a balancing and a weighing of the pros and cons. It was kind of inevitable that Showman's facility was obviously underutilized for many, many years. It was sort of inevitable to, as you drive by it and drive by it and drive by it, that eventually something's going to go there. But I think this something is a great improvement, obviously, over what was proposed before. I'm a little disappointed in regard to the bonus provisions, which I think staff has done a good job in council in revising the bonus provisions. Some of the options also include affordable housing as an option in paragraph F1 speaks to 10% as 10% of the project being proposed as affordable housing. I think that's a missed opportunity there. And also, years ago, we included some LEED standards as additional option for a project, and I didn't hear anything about green or LEED standards. Perhaps the developer is doing it, but just not touting them. But with all that said, again, it looks like a greatly improved project, and I can support it.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from council members? Okay, and who seconded that? Was it? Okay. Well, we have a motion by Councilman Maniscalco, a second by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Motion carried unanimously. Second reading and adoption will be held on June 6th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m.
And before we move on to item number 8, we had a request by Councilman Maniscalco to turn off the fan. Do any council members have an objection to that? That's what I thought. Just making sure, if you don't mind, Dwayne.
Is that a motion on the fan?
It would appear so. Thank you. Yeah, you know what? Let's take a 5-minute break, if we may. We will be back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Somebody left their,
Mother's calling me. Hey, Tony, what's going on, buddy?
Laura, lift your head and let your long hair down. It's a broken road, but you're homeward bound. Laura, lift your head and let your long hair down.
Queen, if you could take roll, sir.
Dingfelder.
He's coming.
Goodis. Goodis, I'm sorry. Maniscalco.
Here.
Citro.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
And Viera.
Here. Okay, now we're proceeding to item number 8.
Mary Samaniego, item number 8 is REZ 1935. It's a rezoning request for the property located at 4224, 4226, 4236, and 4242 East Bush Boulevard and 4213, 4215 East Ava Street from CG to PD for retail sales, gasoline, and restaurant with drive-in.
Good evening, council members. David Hay again with your Planning Commission staff. I have been sworn. We move up to the University Planning District for this next case. The subject site, there is transit provided at the northeast corner of West Bush Boulevard and North 46th Street. That's the closest transit stop. Harts Route 39 and 5 connect the subject site to the Northwest Transfer Center, downtown Tampa, and the University Area Transit Center. The subject site is not within an evacuation zone. On to, one other thing. Bush Boulevard is recognized as a transit emphasis corridor. Here we have the aerial. You can see the subject site here is at the northwest corner of 46th Street and East Bush Boulevard. This large area is the parking lot for Busch Gardens. Mel's Hot Dogs is right here. You've got also the Econo Lodge kind of to the southwest of the subject site. Bush Boulevard is predominantly commercial. There's some single-family detached and multifamily to the south, and then there's mostly single-family detached to the north of the subject site.
David, the most important issue is no adverse impact in Mel's Hot Dogs.
No adverse impacts to be found at Mel's Hot Dogs.
Just kidding.
Science is not focused. There we go. On to the future land use map. The subject site and all these properties in this pink on Bush Boulevard are all that community mixed use 35. Directly to the north, there's some residential 20. And then the western edge of East Eva Street, it goes down to residential 10. Even though it is a parking lot, the parking lot is planned, has a future land use designation of urban mixed use 60 further to the west. To the south, this brown, we have residential 35 and residential 20. There's also even some residential 50 to the east, about 3 blocks to the east of the subject site. The applicant is requesting to rezone the 1.64 acre site from the commercial general zoning district to the PD to allow the construction of a new 4,500 square foot gas station, convenience store and restaurant with drive-through. The subject site is already operated as a gas station. The proposed PD will allow construction of a new convenience store and restaurant with the drive-through. This portion of the east, This portion of the East Bush Boulevard corridor is planned and developed for medium intensity uses, while the comprehensive plan along these mixed use corridors promotes orienting buildings to the street along these mixed use corridors. Due to the unique characteristics of the gas station and the existing gas pumps, which will remain as part of the PD, it would be difficult to orient the building to Bush Boulevard. Planning Commission staff finds that the introduction of the new convenience store with drive-through restaurant would be comparable and compatible with that surrounding development pattern along this portion of Bush Boulevard. The comprehensive plan promotes safe pedestrian connections. The proposed PD does include several crosswalks facilitating safe pedestrian connections to those building entrances. However, Planning Commission staff would encourage the applicant to provide a sidewalk along the northern portion of the site, which is East Eva Street, to promote a safe pedestrian connection and further the policies that are contained within the comp plan dealing with pedestrian sidewalks. Based on those considerations, the Planning Commission staff does find the proposed plan development consistent with the Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mary Samaniego for the record. Here is an aerial of the subject property. It's in yellow. It is on the corner of 46th and Bush Boulevard, as well as Ava's in the back. There's single family and I think some multifamily houses here in the back. It's currently a gas station. The proposed new use is a gas station with a drive-in restaurant window. Here's a zoning map of the subject property. It is currently zone CG. To the north is the RM16 zoning district, which is a multifamily residential zoning district. To the northwest is a single-family RS60 zoning district. The proposed use of a gas station, or the technical term would be retail sales gasoline, is already permitted in the CG zoning district. The applicant is proposing a drive-in window. Here's the site plan for the application. You can see the entire one. This is the applicant is proposing a small restaurant as part of the function of the gas station itself. It's not intended to be a separate outside company as far as a restaurant drive-in window, as far as a corporate entity. It's going to be kind of run by the occupant or the tenant of the gas station itself, making sandwiches, food of that nature. But per zoning classification, it's still considered a restaurant with a drive-in. Per the City of Tampa Code, a restaurant with a drive-in window is required to get a special use 2 approval, which is site plan approval before City Council. Upon review of the code, the applicant and this proposal meets all of those special use 2 criteria. The only waivers that are necessary for this project is number 1, there is a wetland on the western portion of this site. It has been designated by the Hillsborough County EPC, and per the code, there's a 25-foot setback or buffer from the edge of the wetland. The applicant is requesting, and it has been reviewed through Natural Resources, and they found it consistent for this portion of the wetland buffer to transfer this area, because they need it for the drive aisle, to relocate additional buffer, the same square footage, to the north. When the applicant originally came through with a site plan proposal, this driveway entrance was further to the west, and staff had concerns because this area was really tight for maneuvering in and out of the site. So staff actually requested them to lose one of the row of gas pumps and to widen out this area so there's clear ingress and egress from Bush Boulevard, as well as more direct route into the dumpsters. Because of that, they have to encroach slightly into the wetland buffer, but again, through coordination and work with our natural resources staff, they've provided additional buffer, again, for the same square footage to the north. The only other waiver that the applicant is proposing is to the vehicle use area buffer requirements. Whenever you have vehicle use area, which is the technical term for a parking lot, again, up against a road right-of-way, there's supposed to be an 8-foot strip of landscaping. For Bush Boulevard, as well as 46th Street, per Florida DOT requirements, there is going to be a deceleration lane and turn lane into the site, as well as a deceleration lane here, which will encroach further into the private property. Because of that, and then you have the sidewalk improvements, this only allows for 6-foot landscape strip, because there's a decel lane being constructed, and the sidewalk, and the VOA buffer, and then the parking lot. So simply, they kind of ran out of space to provide the full 8-foot width, again, because of those turn lane improvements. So they're requesting a waiver to go down from 8 feet to 6 feet, subject to a new payment. Staff has no concerns about that waiver. Other than that, I know the applicant is here to present her proposal. There are some changes to the site plan between first and second reading, mostly just notes and numbers need clarified. Transportation just has one modification about the mitigation payment, and Natural Resources just has some corrections to the tree table. But other than that, the Development Review and Compliance staff did find this consistent. with the City of Tampa Land Development Code. Do you have any specific questions about this application?
Any questions from council members?
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, ma'am. Being none, we would ask the applicant come forward.
Good evening, council. Name is D.V. Satyanathan, 1055 Catherine Road, MDM Engineering. As the staff, we've worked extremely hard with the staff and DOT to come up with the site plan. We acquired the 3 lots to the west. As you could see, we also acquired a lot of wetlands and a lot of grand oaks that we are preserving every one of them. We worked hard with DOT as well as some of the residences that neighbor us. And there exists a wall, 6-foot wall on the north property boundary, which is dilapidated. So we are proposing to rebuild that. This facility is about 30 years old. It's very old, tired, and so it's a fresh new look. And it is currently CG zoning. So we respectfully ask that you approve this request.
Thank you. Anything further?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from council? I have a question, if I may, just out of curiosity. What kind of restaurant or I guess drive-through?
Well, it's going to be probably a donut sandwich kind of deal.
Donuts sold. There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody here for public comment on item number 8? Okay, we have
Second.
a motion to close by Councilman Maniscalco, a second by Councilman Goods. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, I believe it's Councilman Citro. Do you mind taking item number 8, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to support an ordinance being presented for first reading consideration, rezoning property at the general vicinity of 4224, 4226, 4236, and 4242 East Boulevard, and 4213, 4215 East Eva Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 1, from zoning district classifications CG Commercial General to PD Plan Development Retail Sale Gasoline and Restaurant Drive-In, providing an effective date.
And were there any waivers or revisions with that? Yes, okay,
With all, including all waivers.
Thank you.
A revision sheet attached to it is the question. And I believe the answer is yes, so if you would include the revision sheet
Okay.
as set forth by the city staff.
Okay.
As part of the motion, please.
Including the revision she set forth.
Thank you very much. We have a motion by Councilman Citro, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. I'm sorry, Councilman Dingfelder, I apologize.
That's all right. Legal counsel, real quick. Whoever wishes to come up. So, like I said earlier, on the variance review board, Mr. Citro and I experienced, y'all gave us some nice guidance in regard to making motions and that sort of thing. Here, I'm looking on page 7 of this report, it speaks to waivers and the criteria we're supposed to use to look at and to consider the waivers. Is that just for future reference, not necessarily specifically related to this, but generically? Would you consider it important for council to speak to the fact that they met these waiver criterias and that are spoken to in section 27-139, 4?
Rebecca Kurt, Legal Department. When making a motion to approve, the minimal thing that's required under the law is to read the title on first reading and move on. As your legal counsel who is charged with defending these, sometimes with approvals and sometimes with denial, explaining the basis for it is always something that I appreciate and I think increases the viability of whatever decision it is.
And specifically as related to waivers and PDs?
When you have a PD, there's several things that you're supposed to require. With all rezonings, you have to consider your entire comprehensive plan. All of those are applicable. As when you have a PD, you evaluate in addition to that the purpose of the PD and the waivers and the waiver criteria that you're identifying. I certainly, as I said, appreciate when you pass a motion to state the facts that you heard and relate them to the things, the minimum that's required is to read it. But when you have a denial, then you do have to specifically identify all those.
Okay. And I'll just make a friendly suggestion that perhaps you, legal staff, provide us, with some guidance, written guidance that we could keep hearing after hearing, that we can plug in, just like we've been doing on the VRB. I think it's helpful.
If I can, to speak to that when you're done, sir. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah, of course.
And if Ms. Kurt wants to add anything.
And I apologize to the gentleman who's waiting,
No,
but it's relevant.
This is extremely relevant. With regard to denial specifically, as Ms. Kurt said, there are requirements under Florida law that when you deny a development order, you have to state the section of the code or the comprehensive plan that relates to that. The law is evolving in this area, but I should point out as a general rule that, and Ms. Kurt has begun the process of perhaps creating an opportunity for the full council to have this discussion, because I think as time goes on it will be very useful. But that being said, when these issues are challenged, regardless of what council's decision is, whether it approved it or whether it denied it, and these go to a circuit court judge for review, a circuit court judge can't second guess your findings of fact. So you are the finders of fact. This board are the finders of fact. You apply it to the code, and just as a jury would, you render your verdict. Of course, the rules of evidence are different, so it's just quasi-judicial. But if you, in the determination of whether the waivers are met or whether the purpose is fulfilled under a planned development, if you have specific findings of fact to support that decision as part of the motion, and any council can add to that, that is something that cannot be second-guessed by a judge when they review it. That is something that will strengthen the city's position, regardless of regardless of what that decision is. And I think in that regard, that is a direction that I think we're going to need to move to be able to strengthen the city's decision, the city's position to support your decision, whatever it is. So I think, council member, to be able to answer your question, it is a question that's well taken and it deserves to be looked at in a way we can support you. But specifically, it would be inappropriate for staff to be able to predict and prejudge what kind of criteria or matters that may come up to be able to put words in your mouth. It's a matter of...
Well, it's sort of what I was getting at was sort of like fill in the blank. So, which is what we've done at the VRB. It just says, the basis for my motion is, and then you've got blank, and then we would fill in the blank depending on what that particular case is and what the facts have been of that particular case. I beat this horse enough for this particular case. I think we should just vote on that. But it's something we need to keep talking about.
Thank you. And to add to that, and not to extend it too long, but I will tell you that council has been getting that sort of guidance with regard to the review hearings, and I'm certain that legal will take a good hard look at this as to how to help council better prepare for these decisions. So thank you.
Thank you. And yes, sir. And I would just urge, and this has nothing to do with this poor gentleman's hearing here, that if anybody has any questions with regards to these issues, because these are legal issues with great weight upon the city if we are sued for attorney's fees and damages, et cetera, to set up a meeting with one of our very skilled city attorneys. I've done that before because anything you can say can and will be held against you if a case is appealed, and that's not good. So, okay, so anything further from council members? Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Citro, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion carried unanimously. Second reading and adoption to be held on June 6th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m.
Thank you, sir. We go to our final item of the evening for the final countdown.
Mary Samaniego, final case tonight is REZ 1961. It's a rezoning request for the property at 4501 North 42nd Street from RS50 to planned development for a place of religious assembly.
All right. Good evening, council members. David Hay again. For our last case, we're in the central Tampa Planning District, more specifically the East Tampa Urban Village. The subject site is an existing building on site. The site is not within an evacuation zone. There's convenient transportation access, public transportation access. The closest bus stop is approximately 550 yards from the site of North 40th Street and East Osborne Avenue. On to the aerial, you can see here's the subject site. This is Emma Street. It dead ends into the railroad tracks that are here. This is North 42nd Street. Again, this is 40th Street. You can see there's some heavy commercial and light industrial type uses here, but predominantly the surrounding area is mostly single family detached with maybe a scattered duplex. On to the future land use map. You can see the subject site and all the properties directly surrounding it are in that residential 10. There is some residential 20 to the east on Cayuga, but you can see in the, referring back to the arrow, you can see where that heavy commercial uses are on 40th Street. The red is the community commercial 35, and again, here's public, semi-public use represented by the blue, and then light industrial. Overall, the applicant is seeking approval to redevelop an existing building into a place of religious assembly. Planning Commission staff reviewed the applicant's request and found the proposed project comparable and compatible with the existing land uses in the neighborhood. And staff also found that approving the petitioner's request will create an educational asset in the neighborhood and provide further opportunities to enhance an existing structure. Based on those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the provisions of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you, sir.
Mary Samaniego, Planning Coordination. There is an aerial of the subject property. It is outlined in yellow. It is at the intersection of 42nd Street and Emma Street in West Tampa. The applicant is proposing to use an existing vacant structure for a place of religious assembly. The structure was built in 1951. Here's a zoning map. The property is currently zoned RS50. When this applicant originally came before staff, per the code, a place of religious assembly, which is a planning term for a church, is a special use 2 approval, which is a site plan approval, provided you meet the special use criteria before city council. However, legally, one can only ask for waivers to the special use criteria in the special use 2 process. Because of the nature of the proposed applicant site plan, which I'll show you in a minute, they needed waivers from other code sections, not just the special use criteria. Therefore, this application mid-process has been converted to a plan development in order to facilitate the legal approval of those waivers. Okay. Do you have any questions about that procedure?
Any questions from council? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, if the applicant for number...
I'm so sorry. I'm not done. I just wanted to,
I was going to say,
about
okay.
that part of my presentation.
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No worries.
So, this is, here's the site plan. Again, the applicant is requesting a place of religious assembly for a total of 20 seats. Again, they're using an existing building. Here is some photographs of the existing building. On the corner again of 42nd and Emma. There's currently a grass parking lot. The applicant is requesting to leave it as a grass parking lot for the required church parking, and they would be required to pave the ADA space and then install wheel stops to designate each individual parking space. The surrounding areas, the remaining surrounding areas, primarily single-family residential homes. So as far as the merits of the site plan itself, the applicant is requesting 7 waivers. The first waiver is to allow access to a to allow access to a local street, Emma Street, in lieu of an arterial or collector. 42nd Street meets that criteria. However, Emma Street is a local street, and again, the criteria for the special use is that places of religious assembly are only supposed to access arterials or collectors. So that is waiver request number 1 for access drive aisle connection to Emma Street, a local street. The second waiver request to the special use criteria is the minimum lot size for a place of religious assembly is supposed to be, or is required to be 20,000 square feet. The existing site is just a little over 10,000 square feet. So that's waiver request number 2. The third waiver to the special use criteria 27-132, the front yard is required to be 20 feet for the west and the south. Because we're dealing with an existing building, it's 0 lot lines to the south and the west. So that's the third waiver request, to reduce the front yard from 20 feet to 0 because of the as-built condition. The fourth waiver, as I just indicated, is to allow grass parking spaces as well as grass drive aisles. The fifth waiver is to reduce the drive aisle width from 24 feet down to 20 feet. Again, from the back of the parking space to the beginning of the vehicle use area buffer is always supposed to be 24 feet. These areas, it's only 20 feet. So that is the fifth waiver request. The final 2 waiver requests are to the East Tampa overlay standards. At least 30% of the front building facade is supposed to be embellished. They're asking to waive that down to 0. Hold on 1 second, I'm trying to find a picture. Again, the West Tampa overlay, there's supposed to be a certain amount of transparency and embellishment on the facades. The current conditions don't meet those standards, so they're asking for a waiver from that standard. And then the last waiver criteria, which I need to amend, is from the north and east property line. There's supposed to be a 15-foot landscape buffer with a 6-foot high concrete masonry wall. They're asking for a waiver for the north side, for 15-foot landscape buffer with a 6-foot high masonry wall to a 3-foot buffer with a 6-foot high wooden fence. Similarly, on the east side, from 15 foot with a 6-foot high CMU wall to 10 feet with a 6-foot high wooden fence. There are several changes to be made to the site plan between first and second reading that are outlined in your staff report. Land development has some just minor changes to the staff site plan, like I said. Natural resources also has a couple minor changes. Transportation found this plan development inconsistent because of the reduction in the drive aisle width from 24 feet down to 20 feet. Transportation is here tonight if you have any specific questions. Urban design found this inconsistent, again, for the waivers requested for the vehicle use area, the buffering standards, as well as the facade embellishment standards. A representative from Urban Design is here tonight if you have any specific questions for her. Other than that, overall, the development review and compliance staff did find this inconsistent with the land development code. Again, referencing the waiver request to specific criteria from urban design and transportation. In the event that the city council does approve the waivers and this request, please reference the changes between first and second reading, as well as the modification to the final waiver to allow for 2 6-foot high wooden fences on the north and east property lines. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council members? Councilman Carlson.
Pardon my newbie question, but
That's okay.
is there a special designation for houses of worship? And if there isn't one at this location in the future, what else could be put there? Is that converted to commercial or?
No, this, okay, one moment, let me gather my thoughts here. Okay, so this property, as David indicated, is in a residential 10 land use category. So residential 10 land use category is primarily for single-family neighborhoods. Saying that, always in a zoning and planning context, there are certain uses which are compatible with single-family neighborhoods, primarily schools, playgrounds or parks, places of religious assembly, and sometimes daycares. Those types of uses historically in the city of Tampa, as well as throughout the country, are either conditional uses or special exceptions or special uses in the city of Tampa. So they are kind of conditionally permitted. So they have to meet certain criteria to ensure that they are compatible with a single-family neighborhood. So that's why this started out as a special use criteria, and there are specific criteria that should be on our arterial collector. It should be at least 20,000 square feet, as well as there are additional setback criteria. Those criteria are to ensure that it's compatible with a single-family neighborhood.
So if it's no longer a place of worship in the future, then it has to revert to a special use permitted?
Yes, it would
or
either
a
convert, the
residential?
property would either convert to a house or possibly a school, a daycare, some sort of other quasi-public use.
Councilman Dingfelder.
Just as a follow-up, Mary, in this case, they're asking for a PD. So if we approved it as a PD, to respond to Mr. Carlson, the PD is specific as related to the worship assembly, correct?
Yes, this
So-
PD, the only allowable use would be a place of religious assembly that complies with
That
this
complies
specific
with
site
those
plan.
codes. So that's, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay,
Anything further? Thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
Time for the applicant.
Good evening, my name is Michel Manus. I'm glad to be here and talk about this property. In 2015, when I saw this place was like a trash place where people set everything they don't need, mattress, couch, everything, and roof down, and I bought it. And after all alteration, make it like a new place. And I'm a pastor, I figure out what I can use it for the glory of Lord. I see some Haitian around, and I said I'm gonna do that and for the Lord. And that's the reason why I try to change it to church, so I can glorify the name of the Lord. That's all. And I believe since I start the alteration, making that place new, I stop people from throwing trash over there, and nice looking, great. And I got some picture, the way it's looking right now. I got to see the old picture and the way it is right now. That's amazing now. So
And do you want us to see those photographs, sir?
yes.
We can, if you don't mind.
Let me go get the old one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is what I bought in 2015. That's the way it was, like a box, broken box. And this is what it is now. Yeah.
Night and day.
And this is all the step to make it from the box.
I'll turn it around.
This is all the step according to the city of Tampa, according to the code to make all that. That's a lot of work to get this. My neighbor, they like the job and they so appreciate what I do to improve this area, make it looking better. And I promise to keep working as much as I can afford, make it looking better out.
Anything further, sir?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions from counsel for the applicant? Councilman Dingfelder.
Yes, sir. So,
Oh, and sir, if you don't mind.
Come on. Bonjour. So did you add those 6 courses of cinder block? Is that what it looks like? You added that?
Not me.
Oh, but you, that's
Yes,
what you,
I spent
okay.
all that money.
And a new roof and the whole.
New roof, everything. New
Okay,
roof.
yeah, that's pretty.
It's like a brand new building.
That's pretty significant.
Yes.
The proposal says, that you want to go with a wood fence.
Yes.
Instead of a concrete block fence,
Block
which
fence.
is less expensive.
Yes, that's right. Because I already spent everything I got to make it this way.
My question is, what's on the other side of the fence? Is it a residential? Is it?
Yeah, it's a residential on this.
And have you spoken with those neighbors? Are they supportive? Or?
Yes, I talked to one of them, and they said she's okay with that.
Okay.
And she liked the church because what I'm doing that changed the character of this neighborhood.
Much improved over what's
Yeah,
there.
improved, yeah.
Okay. And in regard to the parking area, staff indicated you want to leave it grass?
Yes.
Okay. So would we change the site plan to reflect that? Because right now the site plan says paved. I wouldn't want him to get over to building construction and say he has to pave it.
No, I understand that, sir. In the staff report, I've reflected as changes between first and second reading to correct that matter.
And that's one of them, okay. And the last thing, Mary, in regard to the overlay district, the overlay district speaks to some type of exterior improvements, I think you alluded to.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it looks like on the front, he's got significant improvements, at least in terms of the front door and the facade. So what's the issue there? Why the waiver?
There's a minimum 30%. If I may, can I call Roberta Mead up? She's our urban design staff. If she can explain the specific criteria.
Roberta's
for
been
it.
waiting all night to come talk to us.
Good evening, Roberta Curry, Planning and Development. I have been sworn, and congratulations to each and every one of you. This is my first time in front of you, so thank you for your service. Basically, the West Tampa overlay does have certain criteria when the facades of this building face the street. So what we're looking at is, does it have 50% transparency, windows, architectural fenestration, and detail, 70% architectural embellishment. So because the,
She meant East Tampa.
did I say East Tampa?
You said West Tampa.
Okay, sorry, West Tampa. They both have the same thing. So his building, the front of it does not face the street, it faces the back part of the lot. So the two elevations that face the street are the two elevations that you saw that had the windows. And I think the criteria is he didn't have enough existing windows to meet that percentage, so they had to waive it.
I see.
And again.
Okay, it wasn't clear to me. I thought the front of the building faced the street, but I guess it faces the parking lot.
Yeah, and because it's existing conditions, we were willing to have them
Okay.
go through that waiver.
Because the church, is that a constraint in terms of adding windows and that sort of thing? I mean,
We don't
he'd
look
have
at
to-
we don't look at the use to consider it. It's just basically a criteria for getting the windows on the street, activating the building, activating the street, so that you can see what's going on inside the building and on the street.
Got it. Thank you.
Anything further from council members for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Is anyone here from the public here to comment on item number 9?
Second.
We have a motion to close by Councilman Maniscalco, a second by Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe Councilman Miranda, is it Citro or Miranda? Okay, Councilman Miranda, if you wouldn't mind taking item number 9, sir.
Mr. Chairman, item number 9, file number RZ 19-61, moving on presented for first read consideration, an ordinance rezoning property in general vicinity of 4501 North 42nd Street in the city of Tampa, Florida, more particularly described in section 1 from zoning districts classification RS50, residential single family, the PD plan development, place of religious assembly, providing an effective date with changes between first and second reading, and also with including the 7 waivers as requested.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilman Dingfelder, did you?
Just a comment on the motion.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, and following up on legal counsel, I think the waivers are appropriate. Especially, it concerned me a little bit in regard to the urban design East Tampa standards, because we should try and respect those standards as, obviously they're there as part of the overlay district to improve all the buildings in the neighborhood. But in this case, the gentleman has really, looking at the before and after pictures, has really done a great job improving that property and, you know, putting some hard-earned money into that property and making those improvements. So I think in this case, that waiver, as well as the concrete wall and some of the other waivers that he's seeking are appropriate.
And he did it, Mr. Chairman, without a facade grant.
And how? Anything further from council members before we vote? Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Miranda, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. I'm sorry.
I'm
go
so
ahead.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
Mary Semenigo, I don't believe that Mr. Miranda's motion include the revision sheet or the correction to the waiver to allow the 6-foot
I think
high
it did.
wooden fences.
Didn't it?
I did not. I admit it.
Okay.
I appreciate your comments, so please add that to the
Yes,
seven waiver.
thank you so much, ma'am. We have an amended motion by Councilman Miranda with these four-sided amendments with a second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, sir. And so, yes, sir. And that is the end. Now we go forward
one
with motions and, oh, I'm sorry.
Motion
My
carried unanimously. Second reading and adoption to be held on June 6th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m.
Thank you. Councilman Carlson. Any motions or anything? Thank you, sir. Councilman Miranda.
I have three that I've been asked to present. I would like to make a motion to accommodate a presentation of a tribute to the Villa Brothers Park that will be presented to Ms. Martha Villa by Representative either Susan Valdez or a member of her staff at a city council meeting on May 16, 2019.
Motion by Councilman Miranda, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The next one's for a departing member of the city who's been working for 37 years. I would like to make a motion to present accommodation to Kathleen Walker Hubert, Parks and Recreation Team Leader 2, who is retiring from the Park and Recreation Department after 37 years of dedicated service to the city, and I would like to make that presentation, or the council make the presentation on May 16th, 2019.
We have a motion by Councilman Miranda, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor? Any opposed?
And the third one, I think Mr. Maniscalco made this one last year, and when I heard it, I couldn't believe it, but I got it this time. I'd like to make a motion, presentation, combination to the City of Tampa Department of Solid Waste Environmental Program Management, recognizing the 2019 Garbage Man of the Year and Woman Day of the Year, of Garbage Woman of the Year. Combination would be presented on June 20th, 2019.
We have a wonderful motion by Councilman Miranda with a wonderful second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything further, sir? Okay. Councilman Citro, anything, sir?
I played with it.
Thank you. Councilman Maniscalco, anything, sir?
Well, we have Mother's Day this weekend, so happy Mother's Day to the mothers from all of us here on the City Council. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you.
And building on that, I wanted to hold out what I call a caballero salute to Councilman Citro, who I believe sent flowers to the people who work in our office who are mothers. Is that correct?
Well, our legislative
Very nice.
aides and all the ladies that help us who do have children, I just wanted to wish them a very special Mother's Day.
And caballero to you gringos means gentleman. So there you go. Anything further, sir? Caballero. Thank you, sir. Councilman Goods.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to present accommodation posthumously to Mr. James Hammond, a prominent civil rights leader who passed away on Wednesday, May 1st, 2019. I will present the accommodation to his family at a service on Saturday, May 11, 2019.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion by Councilman Goods, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Anything further, sir? Thank you. Councilman Dingfelder.
I had not heard about Mr. Hammond. I'm sorry to hear that. He was a fine man, a great leader, a great history. Nothing else. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to pass the gavel to, go ahead. If I may. Did you have anything?
No.
Okay. I move that council be requested to prepare a commendation for Michael Arian, E-R-Y-A-N, who has attained the rank of Eagle Scout, and this be done on June 20th, 2019, under ceremonial activities.
We have a motion from Councilman Bureau with a second from Councilman Dingfelder. All in favor?
Aye. And for new council members, something that I always like is whenever somebody in district gets Eagle Scout, to give them a commendation, because that's a big deal, as we all know. That's the Navy SEALs of scouting. Second, the organization Carry the Load requested that a commendation be prepared for their nonprofit walk. Carry the Load is an organization that provides an active way to honor and celebrate our nation's heroes, including our first responders, with regards to issues involving PTSD, and this be done on May 18th, 2019.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira with a second from Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye. And then lastly, pursuant to a request from the City Attorney's Office, I would like to make a motion to schedule an item on the June 27, 2019 agenda to consider a proposed settlement in the matter of REZ 18-83, a rezoning for property located at 101, 105, 109, 111 North Meridian Avenue and 102 and 106 North 11th Street, Tampa, Florida. Please give this motion an attachment to the clerk. Just kidding. It's right here.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira with a second from Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Nothing further. Councilman Dingfeld.
Well, you inspired me to give a shout out to my favorite Eagle Scout, which is my father, Simon.
God bless him.
Who's 89 years old, and when I used to go to Eagle ceremonies, Dad used to come with me, and he was always got the big applause, and as being the oldest Eagle Scout in the room. But
that's awesome.
And I used to say, Dad, so you used to be an Eagle Scout? And he said, nope, once an Eagle Scout, always
Yep.
an Eagle Scout.
And how it's a great honor. I mean, it really is. Those folks that do it, they work really hard, and I think they deserve that commendation. So.
Shout out to Simon Leroy Dingfelder.
Shout out, heard around council, sir. Thank you. Do we have a motion to receive and file? We have a motion by Councilman Maniscalco, a second by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Adjourned.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes,
Could-
sir.
Could you state that you are adjourned?
We are adjourned.
Thank you.